Okay, so welcome today. Todd and I are talking about, again, this is week three or part three of our 7-part series. We're talking about Todd's newest program, Healing Infidelity from the Inside Out. And for those of you who haven't listened in, this might be the first time you're tuning in. There are 2 more episodes. I'll go into those in a little bit. But I want to share why we're doing this because he's just built this brand new program and we wanted to give anybody listening or watching a peek inside the program, why you've built this program, some of the key concepts, and how it can help people whose lives have been upended by infidelity. So today specifically is part 3 of the 7-part series. We're talking about the betrayed partner today and how healing the betrayed partner. Last week, in the last episode, we talked about attachment styles and infidelity. And in the first episode, we talked about what are people experiencing when they begin this whole process and the importance of learning to communicate effectively so that you can, work through this whole entire process. So we've got both of those links right down below. And there'll be, I think, 4 more episodes after this. So this is 3 of 7. But before we get into the interview, I want to just let everybody know that Todd's created a special resource. So if you want to know more about the whole entire process, Todd's proprietary process that he's used with thousands of couples, successfully healing them from infidelity, you're going to want his guide, the free guide to healing infidelity from the inside out. We've got that link right down below, and it walks you through a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in this series. It really gives you the overview and the background on why the whole process, so you can understand the process, see, if it how it applies, how it can help you. So you're going to want to tune into, almost, I would say, every episode of this series because it's packed full of information that's going to help you. So let's dive into today's discussion. Now, I just want you to know, we're going to focus on the betrayed partner, but in the next week, we're going to be focusing on the betrayer because you've got to look at all sides. But today specifically, we are going to be talking about that. And for those of you probably who are watching this, you might see people walking behind Todd. He's
I just saw that.
in an outdoor place. And it's a
Yeah, I'm in
beautiful
an outdoor
day in
place.
California, where he's located. So
we're just hanging
anyways,
out. And you might hear
yeah,
a chair moving from time to time, but it's all good.
it's all good. Yeah, we can't always we don't know what's going to happen. So if you hear some noises and you're listening to it, it's because we're in an outdoor. You are in it, not me. I'm indoors, but I have things that I can't control here either. So let's dive into
Yes.
healing the victim. Okay. So, and you know what? This is interesting because we were just talking about some of this stuff. So really the first question is, why is blaming yourself for the infidelity as the victim a common occurrence? And Todd, what are your thoughts about this? Because I'm sure I know you've seen it time and time again.
Yeah.
And it's a natural thing, right?
Yes. If you're a victim of infidelity, it's only natural to think, wow, you had to be with someone else. I'm not enough. And that is oftentimes what happens. And especially, as talked about in Module 2, if you felt not enough in your family of origin for a variety of reasons, it's going to trigger those old feelings. So it's tough. It's tough. The truth is that, look, we all want answers. We all want to understand why things happened. And so when my partner cheated on me, not really, because my partner never cheated on me, but let's say I'm a victim of it. My partner cheated on me. It must mean I'm not okay. That's absolutely incorrect. That's never the reason. Never, ever, ever, ever the reason why someone cheats. Now, does that mean you don't have things to work on? Does it mean you absolutely met your partner's needs in every single way? No, and who has? It's not the way it works. So that one of the things that I do with the person who's betrayed is I help them understand that they're taking false responsibility for the other person's
Mm-hmm.
behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not true. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. I want to deal with what's true, what is really true, not the stories that we tell ourselves. It must be me. Now, since I talked about in the last module childhood stuff, one of the things that we've learned in attachment theory, just to go back for a moment because I'm still answering your question,
Right, that's good.
is is that a young child, let's say a young child, is not treated well by their parent. They're not around, they ignore them, or when they're around, they're very critical. There's actually another theory called object relations theory. But really, all I'm going to say about object relations theory is I'm the subject, my parent is the object. And so it's the relationships with my object, the people in my life that are important to me. Okay. And so that's what the theory is about. And what happens is there's phrases in there called the good object and the bad object. Now, even though the terms good and bad is a little simplistic, what it means in object relations theory is that a good object is when the caregiver
Mm-hmm.
meet your needs. When they meet your
Mm-hmm.
needs, that's a good object. When they don't meet your needs, they're a bad object. That's kind of simply said. So
Mm-hmm.
this father, let's say, hypothetically, isn't there or critical or both,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and is the bad object because not meeting the child's needs to feel important, feel lovable, and all that. However, the child experienced what we call the moral defense. So I just thought of this, so I'm just sharing it. The moral
Mm-hmm.
defense means that the child defends the morality of the object, of the parent. Why? How does a child, when mistreated, how would it be for a child to go, I'm fine. I'm just fine. My parents got the problem. Can you imagine a 2-year-old thinking that way or a 3-year-old? I'm fine. My parent has a problem. First, the problem with thinking that, first of all, if I'm fine and you're the problem, I'm in trouble because that means I have no control, I'm powerless, and you're never going to be there for me. So what the child does is they switch it. They go, you're the good object, I'm the bad subject. I'm the bad, I'm bad,
Oh,
I'm bad. And it's what they almost like trade out feeling powerless for feeling low self-esteem. And so a lot of what we do as therapists is we help people turn that around, to help them give back the limitations to the parent where it belongs, who probably had parents that had the same limitations as them. I'm not, but the bottom line is you're okay. Now, fast forward, you have a partner who cheats on you.
okay. So you
Same
just
same thing.
immediately go to that, like, okay,
Same thing.
something bad happened. It must be my fault.
Must be my fault. We were trained to think of that way so that we have control. So one of the reasons that a person who's betrayed feels it must be me is because if they didn't, like the child with the father in this hypothetical case, even though I see it all the time, um, there's no control. There's no power, which is really true.
Oh
That's the
yeah.
truth. And the power that the betrayed person will have comes now when they start to be more tuned in, start to look inside, start to understand their partner. The partner's doing some of their own work. Okay, now we can do something about it. But the reason for the infidelity is never because the betrayed person was not enough.
Okay. So is that like key, like for when in this full module where where you're talking about healing the betrayed? That's like the key thing that's like the key thing they've got to somehow realize, accept, internalize, however you work on it, so that they can begin the betrayed partner's healing process, right? Getting over that and then
Yes,
understanding what
yes,
made the betrayed partner do it, like their own child or the betrayer do it, uh,
yeah.
their
Well, yeah, at
own
least,
issues.
but for this module, we're really focusing on helping that person, the betrayed person, heal by recognizing I'm okay.
Yeah,
But then also to realize even if I'm okay, I'm still hurt. I still
yeah.
was betrayed. My life still feels shattered. I'm, disoriented. All the things we talk about in module one. How do I heal that?
Hmm.
also maybe some childhood wounds were triggered. How do I heal that? And that's what we do in module 3. How do I
Okay.
heal the adult parts of me that have been hurt, but also the younger parts of me that got triggered because of this infidelity?
Okay.
Like not feeling good enough, like in that hypothetical situation. And that's what this is all about. That's what this module is all about, helping the betrayed person heal from the inside out, from the adult parts of them, the young parts of them, and recognize, that they have to grieve. They have to grieve the um, the innocence of the relationship. Right? It's not as innocent now. There's a scar.
Yeah. Right.
And how do I grieve that? How do I not blame myself for things that I shouldn't? What do I need to learn about myself through this? Because people that betrayed learn. They learn what was missing. Maybe I didn't set enough boundaries. Maybe I didn't ask enough for what I want. Maybe I tuned out, and there were red flags, and I didn't even pay attention to them because I so much wanted this relationship to work, and to understand that too, without judgment, without judging oneself. There's reasons why people miss red flags. They don't
Oh, I
want
bet.
to. They don't want to see the truth. They don't want to admit the truth. There's raising a family, let's say, and they want things to work, and sometimes
Willing
the
to overlook
person who
things, right?
they're willing to overlook things. Sometimes the person who did the betrayal is really good at hiding it and
Oh,
manipulating.
yeah.
So there's all kinds of things there that the person who's betrayed needs to accept in herself or himself.
So you talk a lot about in the program, loving and paying attention to younger parts. And
Yes.
maybe you want to share with, especially in the way, in now that we're talking about the betrayed partner, what's the purpose of doing this? Because I'm sure that will, and if you can kind of give any examples that I'm sure would be helpful to people who are listening in.
Yeah. Let's since I use this kind of, like I said, hypothetical example that happens all the time,
Yeah.
with the woman, let's say, who had a dad who was hardly ever there, worked a lot, but when he was
Hmm.
there, didn't he was more critical, not
Hmm.
blamed, you know, just wasn't very encouraging, very kind or anything, and she felt deprived of that strong male fatherly connection. And then let's assume she's in a heterosexual relationship for now, and the man cheats.
Hmm.
She's hurt because this is the man she loves, and they've they've built a life together. Maybe they raised children together, so that hurts on that end. But it
Hmm.
also invariably, as we talk about in module 2, triggers the younger part, who's like, this is kind of familiar. Um, this is that little girl that never felt she was worth attention, or that she takes it as more criticism of her as a person. Where my dad criticized me by talking, my husband criticized me in his own messaging by cheating on me, right? And so that part that feels alone, that feels inadequate, gets
Hmm.
triggered, and that part is a younger part, not
Oh, yeah.
just the 34-year-old woman who discovered it, or 44 or 54. It's also
Yeah.
the 4-year-old little girl that Mr. Daddy and Mr. Kind, loving Daddy. So it's oftentimes memories come up organically in this program when I'm encouraging you to look within and,
Hmm.
like I said, connect the dots in module 2, but to try to understand that part. And then in module 3 is the beginning of really learning to love that younger part too, or younger parts. And there are exercises that they do there as well, where they actually can experience, it's very profound too, experience loving that younger part, and really, maybe even most importantly, that experience the younger part receiving that love. And that's really very, very important.
Yeah. I bet. I'm sure it is. So, in this module, one of the things you talk about is that many victims may feel embarrassed or reluctant to talk about what they're going through, yet you stress the importance of a strong support system. So,
Yeah,
let's,
so
why
true.
don't you just talk a little bit about why this is so important
Yeah,
and how you help them feel more comfortable about reaching out and building that support system? Because it is important, right? We're not, you
it
know,
is. It
and what
is.
kind of
Well,
a support system should they, be building? Because that's like, there's good support and bad support, I'm sure, right? I mean, it's
it's a
not we
difficult
or they.
that's a good question, and it's not a simple answer. But
Okay.
it's traumatizing to
Hmm.
discover that you've been cheated on. And what we've learned, those of us that have treated trauma and learned about trauma, is that the most important part of trauma is to have be able to process it. And a person like myself as a therapist can be helpful, but having a few people in your inner circle that can help you process the trauma and not be alone is really helpful to prevent, even worse cases of post-traumatic stress disorder. It
Hmm.
really is helpful. The problem, like you mentioned, is it's embarrassing for some people. It's embarrassing. The betrayed person might be embarrassed for several reasons. So, first of all, might be embarrassed, like, look, my husband cheated on me. What does that mean about me? I'm
Yes,
assuming
like
the
we just
woman in this
discussed,
case.
right?
But
Right.
yeah, I've had men the same thing. I have plenty of women that have been the ones who did the betrayal. But just keeping the same example, she might have a hard time sharing because of her own embarrassment. Like I judge me. I don't want you to judge me and think, what's wrong with me that my husband cheated on me? Even though lots of times when people do that, they discover my friend had the same experience. It's typical. I've seen that happen over and over. The
Mm,
other thing is they're trying to protect the reputation of their partner. They don't want, and they don't want, let's say, I don't want my mother and father to hate my husband because we have a
exactly.
family, right?
Exactly. Right. Especially if
So,
you're going
so
to
it's
stay
like,
in the marriage, you don't want them to
yeah,
resent it and then like
yeah,
things to be weird
it's
when the
true.
family's together, right?
Yeah, so you gotta pick a person or two that you just know they, at least you believe that there's a good chance that they won't be so quick to judge, and they'll just be there for you and listen to you. And I think, and again, part of module 3 in healing the betrayed person is having the person who betrayed in on this, right? That's one of the other aspects, one of the other parts of this module.
Hmm.
And the person who betrayed has to oftentimes give up a little ego and let him or her be exposed so that their partner gets someone to help them through this process and help and have people that are in the pain with him or her. So the person who betrayed has to oftentimes be accepting that, okay, I'm going to get found out a little bit, so I'm not so perfect, and they're not. And I think that I I have asked many people that were betrayed to do that. Shh.
Sorry, another
Um,
scraping chair.
you have no idea how far away that is too, but it's just a
Oh my
metal
gosh, it
chair. I mean,
sounds like
concrete.
it's like
Yeah,
right at your
it's
table.
really not. It's really not close.
But I think
Um,
these your
yeah,
AirPods probably
yeah.
catch everything. That's how well they're built, right?
I know it's amazing. So yeah, so it is important to do this with some sensitivity and
Hmm.
some wisdom, but to not have anybody to talk to is not the best way to go.
Right.
Even
I mean,
though I've had people choose that, and
well, they came to
that's
you
right.
though, but you're the person, you're the support
I'm the
person
person. I'm the
in that
support.
case.
Yeah, and
Right.
even in the program, I'm there. I'm not there. I'm there virtually. I'm there, you know, virtually, and that can be really helpful too. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
try to
They
make it
can
as
always,
interactive. Yeah.
right. And then they can always, someone who's in your program could always
Oh
have
yeah.
a few sessions with you if they
Yeah.
really felt that they
Absolutely.
needed to talk to
Absolutely.
someone. I mean,
But I do encourage them if they can to get people in their support system, and not always the parents for those reasons. Sometimes it's going to be friends. I've had people where they did tell their parents. The parents just were kind and non-judgmental, and and that works out. I mean, I've seen that too. I've seen all kinds of situations. But the
Yeah,
betrayed person does need as much support as they could get.
right. So let's wrap this up with one last question before we end. Why don't could you just give the audience, a few pointers that the betrayer can help their
Oh,
how they can
yes.
help their
Yeah.
partner heal? Because we're
Yes.
talking
Yes.
about that, and I think we haven't even touched on that yet, and that's like
Yeah. Oh, it's big.
so key. It's big.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And in the program, I devote a whole lesson to the person who did the betraying, so they can help in the healing of the betrayed person. It's very important. One of the things, of course, number one, listening, attunement, attuning, and the challenge for the person who betrayed is they're full of guilt or shame, and their agenda is, can my partner just get over it fast? And so they have that agenda. And so
right,
oftentimes that is a block to being a healthy, loving, attuned listener. And so the person who betrays has to be a grown up, has to not succumb to their guilt and shame. The last thing the betrayed person needs is a partner who betrayed and then goes, and the person who was the victim of the betrayal says, I'm really so disappointed with you. And the person who did the betrayal goes, I know, I'm such a jerk. I'm such a jerk. That does nothing. That I'm such
right,
an idiot, and they're into the self criticism, self blame, that they're in themselves still. It's like, yeah, they have to regulate themselves. Don't don't sink into the ooze of their guilt or shame or regret, and stay with the person who was betrayed, and tune into them, and do the communication exercises that we talk about in module 1 and module 5. But to stay tuned in and be present for the person who was betrayed, who's been caused so much pain by their choices.
and also do their own personal work.
And that it's so important for them to do their own personal work, and that's part of being able to be present and not, one of the reasons the person probably acted out is because they didn't have enough of a mature way of regulating their emotions. Well, they got to learn it, and they got to learn it now, and
Yeah,
that's what this program is greatly about. How do I regulate me as the person who betrayed, so I could be there, at least in module 3, so that I
hmm,
could be there for the person who was victimized by my secrets.
right, right. And as we've mentioned before, if you're not, you have to be willing to do all of the work. Otherwise, the same
Yeah.
thing's going to happen again and
Right.
again, whether or
Right.
not you stay in the this relationship.
Hmm.
If you don't do
Absolutely.
your own work,
Absolutely.
and I don't know. I mean, do you think, this is my question, like, as the victim, if you don't do your own personal work, you're like more likely to attract a partner that's also broken? I don't know. I mean, not
Hmm.
broken, I shouldn't
Hmm.
say, but I mean, who
Hmm.
has childhood attachment issues. So if you work on and yourself, does that
Yeah.
help to
You
change the
mean you? Are you
dynamics of
saying
the
to
relationship now? Or if you are with someone,
future?
you choose to leave and
Yeah.
go into a
Sure.
new relationship?
Sure. I mean, it's a dynamic process. I mean,
Right.
many people, as they work on their own work, do their work, recognize what was missing, begin to heal.
Hmm.
If they're in a relationship, it becomes a building process for both people, and they could
Right.
feed on each other. If the relationship ends, yeah, each person who's done their work are now at a different level, and they may attract someone who is who has done their work on some level. I mean, it varies, right? But
Right.
surely the person, the again hypothetical example of the woman who had a father who was critical and wasn't there, and then she gets married, and she just accepted neglect from the husband, maybe, and
Right.
wasn't, maybe, and now does this work, and let's say they don't make it. right? They
Right.
don't make it. They do the program. It was good, but they decide not to stay together. This person is going to go into a relationship. They're not the person that's going to be with them next, whether it's their husband becoming a better person or a more evolved person, I should say,
Right.
or it's another relationship. That person's not going to get away with it, neglecting, ignoring. She's going to go, "Do you do that? We're done." And so she learns to ask more for herself.
Right.
So,
Right.
so it's going to be a different relationship, whether it's the partner
Because
who
you're
did the
different, because the
betrayal,
person is
right?
different, right?
Yeah,
Because they
that,
did the work on themselves. So, I mean, that's the key here is for people to know no matter what, if you're going to stay in the relationship or not be in that relationship, you have to work on yourself. Otherwise, you're going to
yes,
get you're not,
yeah.
you're going to have the same relation, maybe not the same exact relationship, but you're not going to have the relationship you want.
Similar dynamic, similar. It's a very similar. That's what happens. I can't tell you how many people I've seen where they've been through the same process two, three, four times, and
Wow.
with different relationships, maybe not
Right.
marriages, but long-term relationships or
Right.
medium-term relationships, and then then they work on themselves, and it's like that's not going to happen because they are more integrated as human beings themselves. So the basic thing of this going through this program as you go through the program, you two have become more integrated with all those parts of you.
Hmm.
You're able to communicate more robustly, more deeply. You become better playmates and love mates and soulmates, and or and that's usually what'll happen. Or your next relationship will be far better because you're in it. I'm just going on what you asked because you're at a
Right.
different vibrational level. And
Right.
so it is a win-win. You do the work, you get the benefits.
Right. And
Absolutely.
that's what I'm
Guaranteed.
saying. Right.
Guaranteed.
So that's, I
It's
mean,
just,
again, I just want to
just,
mention that because there could be people that, who want to work with you or buy in the program. And yeah, they like throw up their hands and say, you know what, my partner, we aren't together. So why should I do this? And the
no,
answer is whether or not you
no.
need to, and whether both, everybody needs to work on themselves that have been through any kind of trauma in their relationship, and
Well,
especially infidelity.
that goes down to, life is about us becoming more conscious and aware. And the more conscious and aware we are, the more we can better take care of ourselves, be more loving to others, have better, more options, more choices, all those things. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's wonderful. All right. Well, that was a jam-packed episode there. Stay tuned
yes, it
next
was.
week in episode 4. We're going of the series. We are going to talk about healing the betrayer. We'll probably
Hmm.
refers to some of the things we talked about here. But for
Hmm.
sure, we're going to talk about how the betrayed can help the victim, or how the victim can help the betrayer
It's
heal
not
as
easy to
well.
say.
I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
I know it's like, but it's, it
Hmm.
goes both ways.
Yeah.
And that's what
It
we
goes
want to
both ways.
remind
We'll talk.
everybody here,
We'll
right?
talk
It
about
goes
that.
both,
Yeah.
yes. So, and we're heading towards, the end game here is for people to have the relationship that they want, whether or not. And the goal is really to stay with your partner here and go through this and come out the other side,
Yeah,
right?
I mean that's all. That's what this is. We're not even putting anything in our vision about the other option, even though
No,
it's true that
right.
that this work pays off no matter what. But this program is really about helping the couple heal
Heal.
and do a whole makeover so that they're thriving and they look
The real,
back and they go, that infidelity was terrible, but boy, now we turned that into what we call post-traumatic growth.
I love
Yeah,
that. I love that.
yeah,
So stay tuned for that one. Come back, listen to more episodes, and we've got that coming down the road. So that's where we're heading to. And I just want to remind everybody who's listening is that if you're ready to start your healing process, then you're going to want to get your hands on Todd's proven strategies that he has used to help thousands of couples successfully heal after infidelity. And that is the free guide to healing infidelity from the inside out. I know it's the same name as the program, but that's what we decided to do then. And it really goes
yeah,
through an
yeah,
overview of the whole entire process that you go through in the program so that you understand the steps that you need to take to go from point A to point B. That place where where you want to take your people, that you do take people. So that link is right below. We've got the links to the past episodes. And if by the time you're here and we've got the whole series done, every single link is in the description. So that's it for today, Todd. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time. And we'll
Thank
be
you very
back with
much.
another episode.